I'm Lou Perlman. I'm a consultant here in Washington. I have two questions which I think are just two sides of the same question. The first version is, what do you do about the problem of donor fatigue, which we've heard a lot about lately? And the flip side of it is, there was an excellent report from BCLC recently on recovery from disaster, long-term recovery, and I saw another reference in the news just this past week that the tendency is to focus a lot of response and resources right after the immediate wake of some terrible disaster, but it's harder to find people willing to stay and keep involved over a long period of time, either in recovering from disasters, which are often really not so natural, or making the investments that some of you mentioned or touched on to reduce vulnerability in the first place so that catastrophe won't happen.
Take a crack at donor fatigue, because it's something that...
Just speak in the mic.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's something that I feel a little strongly about. I don't really see a lot of donor fatigue out there. I see in some cases some program integrity issues. There are no shortage of examples of people giving to organizations that don't follow through on their promises, still are sitting on boatloads of money from past disasters and programs. And so I think that it's not a matter of the generosity flagging, but rather a matter of being sure that the work we undertake is undertaken with the clarity and the speed and the commitment that you should rightfully expect as a donor in times as challenging as the ones we're involved with. And so what I would say is that I think our donors should continue to hold us to the highest standard, both the NGOs and companies and governments. This work really matters. This is not something that one should touch or should get involved with because it seems socially cool. This is not a hobby. The people touched by these events are profoundly affected until, over the course of their entire lives. Their families are touched. The scale is beyond your imagination. And at the end of this stuff, this really matters. And so what I would say is anytime somebody talks to me about donor fatigue, I say, I don't think they're tired. I think sometimes they're pissed. But at the end of the day, it's up to us to be sure that they see the same commitment and the same follow-through and the same headset that gives them to pull money out of their pocket to give it to us to do work with. And so when I hear that, I say it's really up to us to do even better than what we're doing.
Go ahead.
Can I add a little to that?
You can. And then wait on the question, but go ahead, Mark.
It's a great question, and we think about it a lot in the government. I think if I said the reason the President is interested in reaching out to you all after natural and man-made disasters is to try to do a better job of coordinating all the assistance coming from the United States. But there's also another reason, and that is to try to sustain the giving. President Bush asked his father and President Clinton, as you know, to get involved in the tsunami and Katrina. Why? Because they attract a lot of press. And when they kept visiting and kept talking about it, the contributions kept coming. Similarly, reaching out to CEOs. They've got great Rolodexes, and they can keep calling. And one of our interests in this particular partnership was just what you've identified, the effort to turn the tents into real houses. But that requires that staying power. And one of the I guess what I'd ask all of you to do as you think about the next disaster that's coming and the agreement that you reach with an NGO in whatever the part of the world you care most about, or the agreement you reach with your own organizations in that country, is slow down, don't spend it all on day one. That's when you do silly things. Save some of the money for the long slog, and you'll be glad you did. We, the world, did some really silly things after the tsunami. Others on the panel have made reference to that. Prevention, very important, and we need your help on this one too. The Congress is very good, generally. Is anybody here from the Congress? Don't tell anybody I said this, okay?
I think you're on the record today, Mark.
Thank you. The Congress is generally very good at responding to a disaster. They're very generous every year in their funding for our international disaster account. What's harder is to get the sustained funding for the prevention programs. But boy, do they pay off. Let me just tell you one story from this year. I visited Bangladesh after the cyclone. And they took me down to visit some villages in the south that were very, very badly hit by the cyclone. And let me tell you what I saw. I saw some man-made walls of mud that looked awful. The reason they looked awful is they worked. I saw some forests of mangrove trees that might not survive because they took the force of the cyclone and protected the village behind them. We've got to rebuild those walls. We've got to replant those trees. And another member of the panel's husband and I spent a lot of time talking to the Congress about not forgetting to fund those prevention programs. How many people were killed in the Bangladesh cyclone? And how many people were killed in the Bangladesh cyclone in the early 70s? Drop of zero. That's amazing success. But you got to keep funding the prevention programs. So anything you can do to help us with that message on the Hill would be much appreciated. Thanks.
Question?
My name is Walter Jurasek. My question is, there were other countries involved in that help with the Chinese earthquake. What were your challenges to coordinate with other nations as your effort? What are the challenges was to coordinate communication with those other nations?
Who wants to take that one on? Go ahead.
I'll take a dimension of the coordination role. Very often around the world, people give to their local Red Cross or Red Crescent Society and say, please give this to China. In our case, you need someone or some entity that decides, in partnership with the Chinese Red Cross, who's very busy responding, how do we take these dollars, these Swiss francs, these euros, et cetera, how do we program it? And there is an organization for us in Geneva that works very closely with the Chinese Red Cross that decides how to allocate that assistance. Decides, for example, the Americans are offering logisticians, where should they go? The Germans are offering doctors, where should they go? There is, at least in the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement, a coordination effort which is really critically important. And we saw that in China, we've seen it in Myanmar, we even saw it here in the United States in Katrina, when the international response was extremely helpful for the American Red Cross. I can't really address your question in the context of government, but certainly in the NGO community, in the Red Cross world, that's how it happens.